My parents always favored my golden child sister and disowned me for starting a business. Now, my company is successful, my sister lost her job, and my parents want me to hire her. I, 29M, was recently contacted by my parents, who have not been in touch with me for the past 5 years. They want me to help them out, or, to be more precise, they want me to help my sister out. My sister, Edna, 31F, has always been the golden child. My parents never even tried to hide it because, back then, she seemed to be better than me in every way, especially academically. They made sure I never forgot that. They constantly reminded me how much better she was at school and told me that if I wanted to amount to anything, I needed to buckle up and follow in her footsteps. Edna got into a prestigious college, and then, 5 years ago, she became the youngest director in the history of her company. She had worked there since graduating and had been earning well from the very beginning. But when she made history as the youngest director, her corporate job became the gold standard I was expected to live up to. My parents never stopped rubbing it in my face. But honestly, I had no interest in being a 9-to-5 employee. I understand the appeal of that life, but I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. That had been my goal ever since I even learned what that word meant. 5 years ago, after working in various places and gaining industry knowledge, I finally decided to start my own business. My idea was to create modern and stylish car accessories that I would design myself. I had spent enough time on research and development, and my business model was solid. So, I thought I would talk to my parents about it first. Even though they had always favored Edna, I believed that, at the end of the day, they were still my parents, and they would want the best for me too. I was wrong. So, after my parents threw a party to celebrate Edna's promotion, I waited 2 days before approaching them in person to tell them about my plan. I expected some kind of feedback, maybe even a little skepticism, but instead, they just started laughing. They thought I was joking. They said it was ridiculous that, after years of education, this was my grand idea for a career. When I told them I was serious, their expressions turned cold. They said they strongly advised me not to quit my job because they didn't want the embarrassment of introducing their son as a failure. They already knew my business would be a disaster. They were certain of it. They reminded me, again, that compared to Edna, I simply wasn't capable enough. They told me that if I stuck to my job and worked my way up, I'd at least be respectable, even if I wasn't outstanding like my sister. I was furious. I argued that I didn't need their support, I was going to do it with or without them. That's when they gave me an ultimatum. They told me that if I went ahead with my foolish idea, they would be forced to cut me out of their lives. They didn't want to deal with the shame of having one child who was a rising corporate star and another who was floundering in some ridiculous business venture. They said they had already been considering distancing themselves from me. This just gave them a reason to go through with it. I had 2 choices. Stay at my job, work my way up, and remain part of the family. Start my business, fail, and lose them forever. I think it's pretty obvious what I did. I walked away and never spoke to them again. I cut off my entire family, including Edna, who, unsurprisingly, took our parents' side. Fine by me. She was always too arrogant, and we never really got along anyway. I focused on my business. I had been working with cars for a long time, so I knew my idea was solid. I quit my job and took the leap. I won't sugarcoat, it was rough. At first, I was living paycheck to paycheck, relying on word-of-mouth marketing. But slowly, I started gaining traction. Then, about 1.5 years later, things really took off. Now, I have a comfortable life. I own a nice apartment, live in a great neighborhood, and drive a car I love. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm doing well enough that I no longer question if I made the right choice. My parents had expected me to fail, and I didn't. And that's all the satisfaction I need. For the past 5 years, I haven't spoken to them, not even when I got married to my girlfriend of 8 years. Not even when we found out last month that she was pregnant. They never reached out, even though they knew exactly how to find me. They could have asked any relative where I was. But they didn't. Until last week. Out of nowhere, they messaged me, asking if I would be willing to meet. I talked to my wife about it, and she encouraged me to go, just to see what they wanted. So, I did. When I arrived at their house, they greeted me like nothing had happened. It was weird. They had never been that warm to me even when I did live with them, so I immediately knew something was up. After some small talk, they finally got to the point. They congratulated me on my business success. They didn't apologize, of course not. But they did admit they had underestimated me. I didn't say much. I just smiled. Then they brought up Edna. She had been laid off 4 months ago. Her company had been struggling, and upper management, including her, was let go. She had been sitting at home ever since. They told me she was struggling to find another job because she had spent her entire career at that company. And since all the offers she was getting were below her previous salary, she didn't want to accept them. Then, they asked the question I knew was coming. Would I be willing to hire Edna? Apparently, she was too depressed to apply for jobs on her own, so they wanted me to offer her a well-paying position in my company. I told them I'd think about it. I had no intention of saying yes, I just didn't want to deal with them in that moment. After I left, I talked it over with my wife, and we both agreed, no way. My wife, who works in banking, made it clear, this is your business. You don't owe them anything. She also pointed out that my parents still hadn't apologized. They weren't reaching out because they cared about me. They were reaching out because they needed me. I wasn't going to give in. At first, I planned to just ignore them. But then, they started bombarding me with texts asking for my answer. When I didn't reply, they called me and said I had to decide. So, I finally told them. No. I said I didn't think Edna and I would work well together, and I wasn't going to bring her into my company. That's when they lost it. They started screaming about how they had raised me, how they paid for everything when I was a child, and how I was turning my back on them when they needed me most. I calmly reminded them that they had disowned me. I also pointed out that they had never pressured Edna to help me when I was struggling. But they just kept shouting. They accused me of holding grudges and being petty. They told me that if I had failed, they would have supported me, so I owed them. I laughed and hung up. Then, I blocked them. Since then, I've felt a weird mix of emotions. I know they're manipulating me. But a small part of me still feels guilty. I talked to my wife about it, and she reassured me. They haven't apologized. They don't care about me. They only care about what I can do for them. She's right. Edna never cared about me. Our parents never believed in me. And now that I don't need them, they suddenly want to be family again. No thanks. AITA for refusing to hire my sister after she lost her corporate job. Update 1. Thank you so much for responding to my post. It has been a while since I last spoke to my parents, and honestly, I know that what I did was not a big deal. It's not like Edna will never get a job again, I just don't want to work with her. As I mentioned, my wife and I discussed it, and we both agreed to stick with my decision. But my parents are not happy about that. Now, they're running around telling everyone that I've been jealous of Edna my whole life and that I'm using this as an opportunity to get back at her. I don't understand why they're taking this so hard. I know they've been texting every single relative we have, trying to turn them against me. And it's not like these relatives are randomly asking them about it, no, my parents are going out of their way to tell them what a horrible son I am. It's pathetic. I think this is just a desperate plea for attention, but I'm not giving it to them. I've blocked them everywhere, and I have no intention of changing that. Some of my relatives actually reached out and sent me screenshots of what my parents were saying. I responded and explained the situation. Most of them already knew the truth because, for the past 5 years, my parents and I have barely acknowledged each other at family events. So this whole thing isn't really shocking to anyone. What is shocking is that they're trying to drag everyone into it. Thankfully, after I clarified things, most of my relatives told me not to worry about it. They know my parents are being dramatic. And they're not going to take their side. So, at least that's one less thing to worry about. And honestly, I don't have time for this. My wife is pregnant. I've been thinking about announcing it in a few weeks, but now I feel like I should do it sooner, just so my parents will get the hint and stop harassing me. Maybe they'll finally back off. Then again, knowing them, they probably won't. Update 2. Hello again. So, my wife and I made our pregnancy announcement on social media a couple of days ago. It's been about 10 days since my last conversation with my parents. Most of my family reached out to congratulate us. But then, I got an email from an unknown sender. It said that my child was going to suffer because of what I was doing to my family. I knew immediately that it was from my parents. Who else would say something so disgusting? My baby isn't even born yet, and they're already wishing harm upon them, just because I refuse to give Edna a job. It's insane. And the worst part? It's not even like Edna asked me for help. She never reached out herself. My parents decided to make this their personal crusade. I didn't tell my wife about the email because I knew it would just upset her. She's still in the early stages of her pregnancy, and I don't want to add any stress. But I was furious. So, I decided to deal with it myself. I went to their house. I didn't unblock them, so visiting them was the only way to confront them. They refused to even open the door. Cowards. They knew what they did was messed up. So, I stood outside and yelled. I told them that they had no right to say such horrible things, especially after the way they had treated me my entire childhood. For 5 years, they acted like I didn't exist. Now that I was successful, they suddenly wanted to be my family again. No. I told them that whatever twisted game they were playing wasn't working, it was only pushing me further away. And then, I made something very clear. I told them that I never wanted to speak to them again. Even if they apologized, I would never forgive them. I also told them they could forget about any help from me when they got older. And they would never get to meet their grandchild. Then, I left. And honestly, I feel relieved. I've been holding in all this anger for so long, and now that I've finally said everything I wanted to say, I feel lighter. I haven't told my wife about this visit yet. And I don't plan to, not until after the pregnancy. She doesn't need the stress. Update 3. Hi. So, after my confrontation with my parents, they went quiet for a while. I thought that maybe, finally, they were moving on. I even hosted a small pregnancy announcement party for some close family and friends. I expected my parents to do something dramatic that day, but they didn't. So, I started thinking, okay. Maybe they're done with this. Then, this morning, I got a call from Edna. That was surprising because she stopped speaking to me 5 years ago. I ignored her first call, assuming she was going to ask me for a job. But then she called again, and again. She even texted, saying it was urgent and that she wasn't calling to ask for anything. So, I finally answered. And what she told me completely changed my perspective on this whole situation. Apparently, Edna had been in a bad place for the past few weeks. She had been ignoring texts and emails, including the ones from our relatives. It was only a couple of days ago that she finally read them, and realized that everyone was talking about how unfair it was for our parents to pressure me into giving her a job. The problem? She had never asked them to do that. She was confused. She had been talking to our parents constantly, but they had never mentioned this drama to her. So, after reading the messages, she confronted them. And guess what? They denied everything. They told her they had no idea what anyone was talking about. But she felt like they were lying. So, she called me to hear my side. I told her everything. I explained that they had come to me, told me all about her job loss, and insisted that I had to give her a position in my company. I also told her that maybe, at first, they were just trying to help. But in the end, it became all about controlling me. She was silent for a while. Then, she admitted that she never wanted to work with me. Not in a bad way, she just wasn't in the right headspace to jump into a new job. She had received plenty of offers. She was just taking a break. I told her I was sorry about her job because I knew how much it meant to her. But at the same time, she knew we weren't close. So, she had to understand why I didn't want to work with her. And surprisingly, she did. She was furious at our parents for making her look desperate. She said she was going to confront them. And she apologized for everything I had been put through. I didn't expect that. I don't know if we'll ever be close, but at least we talked. And that's enough for now. Update 4. So, after our conversation, Edna went to confront our parents. It did not go well. They immediately got defensive. They told her they were only trying to help because they didn't think her choice to take time off was a good one. They insisted she needed to get back into the workforce immediately and that they were just doing what was best for her. But Edna wasn't buying it. She told them they had no right to interfere in her life like that. And then, she went even further, she accused them of controlling her from the very beginning. She told them that, for her entire life, they had never let her make her own decisions. They did not like that. So, what did they do? They started listing everything they had ever done for her. You know, normal parenting stuff, but acting like it was some huge favor to her. She got fed up. They got angrier. And the argument got so bad that now Edna isn't speaking to them either. And guess who they're blaming for all of this? Me. Of course. It's always my fault, right? This time, they didn't even bother confronting me directly. They went straight to Facebook. They made some dramatic post about how their ungrateful children had betrayed them after everything they had done for us. They painted themselves as these poor, suffering parents whose kids had turned their backs on them for no reason. But you know what? It backfired. Badly. Because this time, my entire extended family was done with their nonsense. The comment section was brutal. Relatives immediately called them out, saying they had always played favorites and that they deserved to lose both of us after how they treated us. They reminded them that instead of supporting Edna during this tough time, they tried to force me to take responsibility for her. They also pointed out that they never lifted a finger to help me when I was struggling. My parents couldn't handle the heat. So, they deleted the post. Then, they blocked half our family. To sum it up, they've completely ostracized themselves. And I couldn't be happier about it. As for Edna and me, we're not best friends or anything, but she has apologized for how she treated me in the past. And she genuinely seems to want to rebuild some kind of relationship. I don't know how things will go, but I'm willing to see where it leads. But right now, my priority is my wife. And my future child. I can finally say that I feel free. And I couldn't care less about my parents anymore. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.